Shelley, thank you for joining me on the podcast today. Great to have you on.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Now, Shelley, a lot of D2C brands believe the path to growth is simple, right? Spend more on performance channels and scale from there. But you've taken almost the opposite approach at Boxy. Now, before we get into that, for people who might not know you yet, who are you and what does Boxy do?
Hello, I am Shelly, and I lead the marketing team at Boxie. Boxie is a premium cat care company, and we are focused on the proactive health and better litter box experiences for cats and their humans. So, most people think of litter as a commodity, but when you really dig into it, it's actually one of the biggest touch points of the cat's health because they
Mhm.
use it multiple times a day. And so what we're trying to do at Boxy is bring more science, innovation, and transparency into that category through innovation, better ingredients, and technology, and better performing products that make life easier for pet parents.
Wonderful. So when you joined Boxy, what did the business actually look like from a growth and marketing perspective?
So, like a lot of modern brands, Boxy grew up very digitally native. So, a lot of our growth was coming from D2C and, of course, Amazon in the early days. And marketing was very performance led. This model can work very well early on because it gives you very fast feedback. And over time, the problem is that you start to see some limitations of that approach if everything is optimized just for short-term conversion, which is exactly what the company was doing at that point. So when I joined, the opportunity was really about stepping back and asking ourselves, how do we build a more balanced growth engine that can include brand, your core bread and butter of digital, but also expanding into omnichannel retail and in defining what is the clear role for each channel.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I mean, when we spoke before this a few weeks back, Shelley, you mentioned to me that a lot of D2C brands kind of fall into the trap of spend more to grow more. Um, why can that become dangerous as companies scale?
It's actually extremely common for D2C to fall into that mindset that if you just spend more, growth is going to follow. And the problem is that this can create a really false sense of growth. One example I can give is that at one point, we realized we were probably overspending on Amazon. But for years, the team was very afraid to pull back because once you've kind of, gotten yourself in that cycle, there's a fear of, what happens when you pull back. So I went in and my director of e-commerce and I decided to take a bold approach to pull back a lot of that spend. And what surprised us was that the revenue did not change. And this became a very clear signal that a lot of that advertising was not actually incremental. We were essentially paying to capture demand that already existed. So the exercise helped us understand what the floor and the ceiling of our advertising efficiency was. Once you test out and really pressure test what is your minimum floor, that then helps you understand where you can optimize more in your types of marketing spend, whether it's pushing campaigns differently, targeting differently, or pushing different SKU sets differently, and to see how that drives incremental growth. And then you can allocate budget with a lot more more intentionally, instead of just assuming that more dollars automatically means more growth.
And I think you mentioned you're about to, or you just have recently entered into Walmart, which obviously is a huge milestone for any D2C brand. What stage does Boxy feel like it's in right now to you?
Yeah, it really feels like we're entering a scaling chapter. We're truly entering not just, step change incremental growth, but really kind of like taking on massive new territories. And by the way, we are live in Walmart. We've been live.
Live
So
now, yep.
if you live near a Walmart, we have a litter box that doubles up as a cat playhouse. So you can
Nice.
basically punch out the cutouts, and that box that the litter comes in, your cat can use it as a playhouse later on, which is a very common thing for cats to do. If you
I
have a
like
cat, you'll know.
I like that. I like.
So going back to Walmart, I think the early stage of the company was really about proving product market fit and really building a loyal customer base online. And now that we're moving into a phase where our goal is scale, but to scale in a disciplined way. Um, Entering Walmart is a really big milestone because it helps us open up a completely different customer base and shopping behavior. And the key for us is making sure that we grow in a way that stays true to the brand and doesn't fall into the trap of chasing growth at any cost or compromising on any brand values that we have. So, for example, we remain very premium priced, and that's something that we hold true because our product is premium. We put a lot of technology and innovation into it, and we don't want to discount or cheapen our brand. And we believe that because the product works so well, you actually use less of it in the long run. So you're compared to the mass brands saving a lot of money, and it does justify that initial premium price consumers pay.
What's I mean, out of interest, Shelley, what originally pulled you into early stage D2C brands?
I have always loved the intersection of strategy and creativity. And by creativity, I don't mean design necessarily, just design creativity. I mean creativity as in forcing your brain to think about problems and challenges differently. And in the larger companies where I grew up, in the bigger CPGs, things tend to move a little more slowly. Your scope is usually very defined and top down because you got your board, you got your investors, you got a lot of C levels, and by the time it comes down to anyone on the team, this is the sandbox that everyone is playing in, and you're a cog in this massive machine. And I end up doing a lot of air traffic controlling. And in earlier stage companies, you really get to build the system from the ground up. You have to think about everything, the customer, the brand, the channels, the product strategy, all at the same time. And the complexity is actually what makes it very exciting for me because I'm not just optimizing something that already exists. I get to shape how the company gets to grow.
And across the startups that you've been involved with, Shelley, are there sort of specific key growth challenges that kind of show up again and again?
The first one I see, the pattern that stands out the most is over reliance on performance marketing. It's very tempting because it's very measurable and it feels very controllable. So everyone defaults all the time into that. But if an entire growth model depends on continuously increasing the ad spend, you eventually hit a ceiling where your economics start to break. So I found that the brands that tend to scale better are ones that also start to invest in brand equity and channel diversification earlier than they think they need to so that they can really capitalize on both retention and organic growth. Because organic is something you do not pay for. And the second trend I see is really not building up the data infrastructure. So there's a lot of test and learning in early stage companies, but a lot of it is really dependent on what the performance platforms return in terms of data. So if you don't build your own internal data capability, you will be asking yourselves a lot of questions that you don't have the answer to. And then everyone will have a different opinion when you don't really have the right infrastructure built up. So my learning is really making sure that you have your right dashboards, your data warehouse, your data lake, everything set up from the beginning correctly.
And Boxie, like you said, I mean, was very D2C and Amazon led early on. As the business sort of scaled, what risks started to appear with that model and just sort of staying within those two platforms?
Yeah, I think the biggest risk is concentration. It's like that analogy of putting too many eggs into too few baskets. When too much of your business is dependent on just one or two channels, you become vulnerable to changes, whether it's a change in algorithm, whether it's change in advertising costs, or whether it's a change with retailer terms that affect your margins. So it also limits how you think about the customer because different channels serve different needs and different people shop differently, whether it's discovery, convenience, subscription, bulk purchases. And if you only operate in one environment, you actually miss a lot of those behaviors.
Was there was there a moment, Shelley, when you realized that the business needed to prioritize efficiency before more growth?
It was when, honestly, a couple months after I started.
Yeah,
I really, and these decisions are never easy, but sometimes I think the most strategic move is to pause and to rebuild the foundation. So in our case, a few months after I started, that meant pulling back in certain areas, rethinking our advertising strategy, and investing more intentionally in different areas like channel diversification. So we've changed our strategy drastically since I came on board, and we made some uncomfortable moves like slashing advertising costs dramatically. And we finally got to the stage where we are now asking for more budget to increase advertising costs. But for the first time, like everyone was looking at me like, are you sure you want to cut this by X%? And are you sure you are going to be able to still deliver the numbers in this quarter? And we did not have a problem, even though we cut down on the costs.
how how did you feel about sort of getting buy-in from stakeholders within the business, senior stakeholders, sort of at the C-suite? Was that an easy thing to do, or was there trepidation from those individuals?
It's always an iterative conversation, and this is where two dynamics really help me. I think one is that when you work for a smaller company, everyone works as a joint owner mindset, and it really is about the way I approach spend at Boxie. I approach it like I'm spending my own money, and the way I talk to the C-suite, the founders about this situation, I explain it the way that I would be looking after my own finances. And it's a little bit like, well, if you can spend $10 or $5 to make $100, which route would you choose when the
Mhm.
result is the same? The other piece is really having the financial and data rigor. And so that is really what I come back to. When I came on board, we did not have a lot of data rigor. A lot of decisions were based on intuition. A lot of decisions were based on just historical, like leaning on historical experiences, or a lot of decisions were really just made out of suggestions by agencies. And when you go down and start modeling out the different scenarios, I think looking at the numbers made everyone feel more comfortable. And that is what also inspired us to ensure that we have to be building a better data foundation for our company.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I mean, pulling back ad spend and you did it significantly. I mean, that's going to terrify most founders. What gave you the confidence to do that? Had you done this sort of before in terms of channel diversification in other sort of D2C environments? Therefore, you kind of knew deep down that, look, this is the right thing to do, or was it something else?
Yeah, it's a combination of different areas that I draw upon in my past experiences. So in some of my past companies, I can understand how the different economics of the return on ad spend should work. And when I was looking at the agency's reports and what they were coming back with, there were a lot of holes and a lot of duplication and a lot of like signals that led me to believe that we were capturing demand that already existed. And it like to me, it was very clear that this was like an agency trying to sell us, hey, this is, like I'm doing really well on this homework, but I'm only capturing something that's easy to capture already. So for example, they were winning on, branded searches, and I was like, that's great, but like you're winning really well on people who already have interest in Boxy. Let's try to get the people who don't know about Boxy or people who may not be as convinced right now. Just don't go after the easy, lower hanging fruit. And that to me signaled that we were probably overspending in that area. I think the other pieces that signal to me and gave me this confidence is really looking at like really dissecting, just benchmarks from my last companies as well. So I think drawing upon the variety of different startups I've been at really helped me in this role to sniff out the bullshit and and really see where we can pressure test a little bit. And everything comes with a little bit of risk. So you have to really gauge your risk tolerance level on that.
I guess they call it test and learn for a reason, right?
Yeah.
You got to be not afraid to fail. Otherwise, you may never get to that sort of top of the mountain that you're looking for. One thing, Shelley, you mentioned to me before and kind of stuck with me was the redefining the role of each channel. How do you think about the role of D2C, Amazon, Chewy, and retail in the overall growth engine?
Yes, I love thinking about this. We actually ran a customer segmentation, attitudes, and usage analysis. And through that analysis, it was very eye-opening for us to understand that a lot of our, like who your target customer actually are and how they prefer shopping. So for example, we think of D2C as a channel where we can build direct relationships with our customers. I see D2C as a channel that we can launch test SKUs that maybe we're not ready to launch in broader channel yet. You can get feedback loops really quickly. Amazon is a really big discovery channel. So a lot of people actually go on Amazon and think about that's kind of how they start their product search. And Chewy for us has now become a very strong subscription penetration channel. So it naturally lends itself well to replenishment. So, you start to see how each channel behaves very differently. And then retail, especially Walmart, now gives us access to a broader audience and a different type of shopping mission, whether it's
Mhm.
like, oh, I need something in a pinch, or I really want to touch and feel something in a store. So once you define those roles, it becomes much easier to think about how your brand fits into the picture. And for us, brand then becomes the connective tissue that allows a customer to recognize and trust you, regardless of where they encounter the product.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I mean, I think, lots of conversation in the market right now, especially for D2C brands around do they move more to that omni-channel type setup? I understand that many brands sort of worry that a Walmart might dilute the brand. Was there any specific data that you can share that kind of challenge that belief at all?
I can because our team hemmed and hawed around this actually, and we initially were not sure what if this was the right strategy for us. And I think a lot of brands worry if Walmart will dilute their brand. But what we saw was actually the opposite. So first, our segmentation surprised and showed that many of our target consumers shop at Walmart. So they might discover a product online, but they still like buying certain household items in stores as part of a bigger trip. So whether that could be part of like your pet specialty store kind of haul, or it could be like a grocery, like a weekly grocery necessities, household goods kind of trip. And so what was interesting for us is that Walmart also did their own analysis when evaluating the launch. They looked at the type of stores and customer profiles that align with our product offering and price point. And they actually placed us only in stores where the premium shopper is already present. So
Okay.
instead of trying to be everywhere, the rollout was designed to match the stores where our customer is most likely to shop. And that was a really important signal for us because it reinforced that Walmart is a strategic retailer. And also, it's not just one type of shopper, there's a huge range of consumers there.
Which actually kind of makes sense, right? Because at the end of the day, Walmart want you to be successful. So it's not just a put it everywhere and sort of hope for the best. It's
Yeah.
a more strategic approach by them as well, which is good to hear. Shelly, I wanted to ask you a couple of things. I guess if we've got founders or marketing leaders listening to this, just some advice for them. If there's perhaps a founder that is still stuck in that D2C only thinking today, what's the biggest blind spot they've probably got?
I think the biggest blind spot is assuming that online is the only scalable path. I think D2C can be so incredibly powerful early on because it does give you that direct access to customers and the fast feedback loops. But for many physical products, especially in everyday consumable categories, consumers still like to shop across multiple channels. So if you only focus on D2C, you can end up missing a large portion of your potential customers on where they actually prefer to buy. So the real opportunity is thinking about distribution more holistically. Like, how are each of these different channels serving different shopping behaviors? And then how can you show up, whether it's the same or differently, depending on what your brand is, so that all your products in these different channels can work together to grow your brand.
Which I think makes sense, right? I mean, during COVID, it's very easy for a D2C only business because everyone was shopping online, and I think that whole mindset has shifted because it's we want to be where our customers are, and that might not only be on our website, right? They might be shopping in other places. What's the most common mistake, Shelley, that you see brands make when they try to go omnichannel?
The mistake most brands make is trying to make every channel do the same thing. So the real opportunity is designing a system so that each channel plays a distinct role. You don't offer the same exact product portfolio to every single channel. You don't think of your consumers, even though they are all your consumers, but you don't think of consumer behavior the same way in every channel.
Perfect. One other thing I wanted to ask you, because I remember us speaking as well a few weeks back briefly, and you said about I know this whole sort of Walmart came from an inbound inquiry. Was that right?
That's correct. They came to us.
I mean, when retailers start coming to you as a brand, sort of from an inbound perspective, what does that kind of signal to you about the brand?
It signals to me that the product that you've built and the brand that you've created has real power there. I think a lot of founders think of brand as something very cosmetic. They think logos, colors, creative campaigns. But your brand is really about clarity and consistency. And when your brand is well defined, it becomes much easier to scale across channels because customers immediately understand what you stand for and why you're different. And with that, retailers, they are also consumers and customers. They go on Reddit, they go on social media, they go into the stores to check out the competition. And so they're constantly looking for signals like search trends, online sales velocity, social buzz, customer reviews. When you start to gain that traction organically, it shows them that customers are already aware of the brand and actively looking for it. And then at that point, the conversation shifts from the brand trying to convince the retailer to take a risk, which I have been in a position in way too many times in the past, to the retailer wanting to bring the product in because they see the consumer demand building. And so for us, it reinforced the idea that brand building can actually accelerate retail expansion. And this is something that um, I think oftentimes founders in the pursuit of top line growth can miss.
And do you, I guess, taking it back to that time when retailers, Walmart, for example, were coming to you guys proactively, was there a particular tipping point that kind of made that happen? Was it a particular campaign you ran that sort of, or was it revenue wise, or was it something that got Walmart and other retailers excited?
I don't know if there was like a specific point in time. I think it's a combination of many things. So, number one, it is because of our success on
Hmm.
DTC and Amazon, because people can, like look at the rankings and look at, like the top brands on Amazon, and then the reviews that you amass on your different channels on D2C and on, whether it's Amazon or Chewy or other online channels, where it becomes very public and very searchable. People start to look at your product. And then I think our biggest power is actually Reddit. There are so many organic Reddit threads about Boxy. And there are people who say on Reddit, "Oh, everyone's accusing me of working for this company. I do not. But I will not use any other product." And we get such passionate loyalists defending us and promoting us on Reddit. This was something that I found when I first joined the company that I think it's a very good testament to the product market fit that our founder has built.
I guess as well, it comes back to sort of brand advocacy, right? I mean, it's one thing to have it because people refer, and word of mouth again is another sort of great way to bring new customers on board. But the more that happens organically as well, other great things it can lead to, i.e., inbound of retailers wanting to stock your product and sort of helping you to step to that next level.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, just wanted to finish up, and Shelley, I think it's been a fantastic conversation. I think there's been some really interesting bits and pieces that you've shared with us today that I hope many other sort of founders and marketing leaders will start to think about, especially for those that are very sort of D2C led and have been thinking about moving omni-channel. But if you had to give one rule for scaling a D2C brand sustainably today, what would it be?
That's a good one. Don't confuse revenue growth with a healthy growth engine. So it's relatively easy to grow revenue just by spending more, but that doesn't always mean the business itself is becoming stronger or more sustainable. Because at some point, you have to make sure that demand is coming from the product and from the brand, not just from your paid acquisition.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, look, Shelley, thank you very much for your time today. It's been great speaking with you.
Yeah, it was really great to be here. Thanks again for having me.